Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Thanks to your TV on Cogeco, this is our opportunity to talk about the issues and the events that matter most to Oakville. And today, joining me are Cindy Toth and Hassaan Basit. Now, Cindy used to be in charge of environmental policy for the town of Oakville, and now she is a retired volunteering citizen out there continuing to do battle to defend the environment. And Hassaan Basit is I believe we now call you President and CEO of Conservation Halton. And I believe I'm going to just take a chance and throw it out there, Hassaan. Conservation Halton is the province's most popular and well-loved conservation authority. And if TRCA or Credit Valley take exception, well, they can come on and debate that with me. But I will start with you. Hassaan, would you debate that?
I would not debate it at all, and I can actually back it up with all sorts of metrics and stats, Mayor Burton.
Well, why don't you do that? I mean, let's have a couple of supporting metrics, because after all, today's topic is what looks like an effort by the province of Ontario to basically gut our conservation authorities. And council and I at the town of Oakville, and for that matter, all of us on the regional council are alarmed by this. And I'm hoping that you who are watching this may come to share our opinion and perhaps take action in the form of writing a letter or signing a petition or something that will help save our conservation authority. So Hassaan, what is the value of our conservation authority here in Oakville and Halton?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Burton. And you'll know this, Mayor Burton. 4 years ago or so, Conservation Halton decided to take a pause and essentially define success for ourselves. And we went through a process where we looked at what our customers expected of us. We looked at what our stakeholders broadly expected of us. We looked at all of our programs, and we put out a strategy, and we put out some success measures for ourselves to say we'd like to be here in the next 3 or 4 years. And we've achieved all of those. I was just on another call where we're looking at our next strategic plan. What were those metrics? How fast are we going to deliver our permit and plan reviews? And we publish them every quarter. How are we going to manage our finances so that they're not ballooning out of control? How are we going to give residents in Halton and beyond equitable access to green space as our communities grow and expand? We looked at all of those things. We were in charge, we felt, of our own destiny. We were going to live up to the standards that were expected of us, and we've delivered on all of those. So where are we today? Well, we're leading the province in how we turn around permit and planning applications, because that's a big part of what a conservation authority does. Our job, legislated by the province, is to protect homes, communities, and businesses from flooding. That is a very core responsibility. It is the core responsibility that we have. We do that in 2 ways. One, which is a smarter way, by coming in at the front end of the process and ensuring that we're not building homes and businesses in hazard lands, lands that can flood, valleys that can erode, get washed away, and so on and so forth. The other way we do it is by managing dams and channels and flood control structures and issuing forecasts. Again, a very key responsibility. In Halton, the Conservation Authority owns and operates 4 major dams and 3 flood control channels, one of them going through Oakville as well. In addition to those responsibilities, we own and operate 7 parks spread across 11,000 acres of land. We serve 1.2 million customers a year. We operate the province's 3rd busiest ski operation. We bring in 70,000 kids to education programs every single year. These are the field trips that you took in elementary school and now our children take. And we do all of that without any tax dollars. All of the parks operations are self-sustaining. We operate them with a lot of discipline, and we take the money we make and we invest them back into the environment. We invest them back into offering more and more better experiences to our residents. We then keep our finger on the pulse of the environment. And that's where we partner a lot with municipalities on every given day, especially with climate change, especially with growth. with all of the new challenges, with new emphasis on risk and liability to do with flooding. We monitor the environment, we count everything, we look at water quality, we look at biodiversity, we look at habitats, wetlands, turtle habitats, you name it. And we provide all of that data back to our municipal partners. We use all of that data to inform the design and build of more sustainable communities. So in a nutshell, that's the kind of the breadth of services that we offer. And we offer them at a very high level. And we made all of these changes, Mayor Burton, very consciously 2 or 3 years ago. And no legislative amendments were required to bring Conservation Halton's standard of service up to where it is today.
So, I am just astonished at the idea that the Minister of the Environment or the Minister of Mines and Natural Resources would want to wreck all that. Cindy, what are you hearing about the motive behind all this?
So Mayor Burton, I would just like to start with what my retirement is in terms of not stepping away from the amazing work and the need to stay on top of changing legislation when there's a potential impact on our public health, public safety, public risk, and environmental sustainability and climate change response. And as vice chair of the board of the Halton Environmental Network, we continue to watch what's going on. It's really amazing. This is Bill 229, Schedule 6 relates to Conservation Authority Act. And it's really surprising that this little section is within a budget bill and, related to COVID response. And the province, I understand, is only contributing 1 to 2% of the funding for conservation authorities. So it really is unusual and unexpected and surprising to see this embedded within a budget bill. And I think the impacts are far-reaching. I think that the risk is actually enhanced. And I think this whole section undermines the province's response to COVID-19. There are impacts that we foresee in our review of this proposal that I think further compromise, public health and well-being, as well as public safety and security. And that is why it's very surprising. There's no ability to comment at this point. All that's detailed in the EBR as a budget bill. It's just posted. There is supposed to be further consultation coming in to fall. I think fall is nearing the end, but I think it really will be surprising to the province just how much feedback they are going to be getting from all levels of government and a huge diversity of organizations. And it won't just be the environmental organizations. That there's a whole equity issue attached to access to green spaces that are actually critically important during these pandemic times.
Well, let's talk about how to respond, because I know that there's been thousands of emails generated in other communities to defend their conservation authorities. And our MPP for Oakville has just written an op-ed in the local newspaper, not just defending these changes, but kind of saying, the drift of his column is, what's the big deal? It's totally innocent. All we're doing is making things more efficient. And and I'm going to speak about that in a second, but let's keep in mind that it's there's a web tool, Hassaan, that you've got on conservationhalton.ca/bill229, which is pretty easy to get to, and that tells you how you can send an email to your MPP. There have been emails and social media comments in response to MPP Crawford's op-ed, sort of calling him out for trying to whitewash this Schedule 6 of Bill 229. Hassaan, you want to speak a little bit about the few opportunities that there are to register some comments here?
Certainly, Mayor Burton. You've mentioned the website address, but I also want to mention how anybody who watches your show and decides to engage in any of these activities will actually be joining a very large coalition that has already sprung up in 1 week. I think that the Conservation Authority brand and the value that Ontarians put on the services we've just talked about has made the changes to the CA Act as a result of this budget bill the #2 issue in the province. And that's not easy to do given that we're dealing with a raging pandemic. So I think there's a groundswell of movement here. Just in Halton, we pulled numbers yesterday. We've had 70,000 people commenting on our social media feeds. 15,000 letters have gone out to MPPs. You ignore that at your own peril. And so I think if more residents can get engaged, we have a limited opportunity. We feel the government will close the book on any amendments that they still have a window themselves to look at the act that they've introduced and make changes to it before it is passed. We feel the deadline for them to do that is December 1st, because that's when they seem to have booked time at committee to go through clause by clause. So we have between now and December 1st to really get loud in a very principled way. And the website that you mentioned, Mayor Burton, has a letter that the mayors of Halton sent out, which actually preempts sort of the high-level rhetoric and jargon that the province is putting out there as justification for these amendments, and calls them out on 4 very specific areas where the changes they're proposing will have the complete opposite impact or effect of what they claim they're trying to solve. And it will push Conservation Halton back 3 or 4 years, and we're not happy about that.
Well, you know, if you're a conservative, and believe it or else, I used to be one, you've got to be astonished that this conservative government would undo the heritage of conservative Premier George Drew back in the late 40s, who created the conservation authorities, and conservative Premier Leslie Frost, who strengthened them after Hurricane Hazel demonstrated that as much as conservation authorities were needed at the end of the 40s, they weren't quite yet strong enough to deal with the enormity of the problem of what happens when people ignore nature. What was the old line? It's not nice to fool Mother Nature or mess with Mother Nature. She's way bigger and stronger than mankind. So I wonder if we should just cover off, well, there's like 3. There's a whole bunch of changes that none of which I like, and none of which I think are necessary. But there's 3 changes that really stand out. Why don't we start with what's the worst part of the bill? Cindy, do you want to go first? What's your nomination for the very worst part of the bill?
Oh, that's a really difficult one because, depending on your perspective, there's an impact, in terms of land use planning and the protection and the politicizing of land use planning and the potential ability of the province to override not only conservation authorities' decisions, but also municipalities' decisions when, especially, municipalities and conservation authorities work very strongly in terms of land use planning protection policies of our hazard lands and our flood zones and important habitats and wetlands. And this overriding option for the province to step in is apparently related to some conflicts and municipal, raising a municipal voice. But when the municipal voice often aligns with the conservation authority voice, then it actually gives the province an ability to override municipal decision making as well. And that's really municipalities and conservation authorities working in partnership to protect important lands is one of those huge improvements that we've seen over the past while. And there's a great alignment, and that potentially could be gone.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to decide between which one's worse, removing and hindering the conservation authority's role in regulating development, or allowing the minister to interfere before the conservation authority even makes a decision, which is like, what are the there's this crazy belief that they've got to make the process of development even faster than it already is. Hassaan, what about you? What's your view of the worst part of the bill?
I think, Mayor Burton, the worst part of the bill is it is essentially opening a back door to having the minister or a designate of the minister make decisions that should be made by a conservation authority. And the reason they should be made by a conservation authority, what are we talking about here? We're talking about ensuring that property is not built where it will get flooded and will cause loss of life and, of course, damage to the property. This is a very basic red line. We're not talking about some sort of big Green Deal type of environmentalism here. We're simply talking about risk, liability, life, and property, not just to those who build, but those who are going to come and live in those properties. It's about sustainable communities. We make those decisions because we have engineers, we have hydrogeologists, we have ecologists, we have planners. They do all of this based on physics and maths and calculations and engineering. If we do all of that work, and it's all done according to a standard, it's all done within the public domain, it's all done through board-approved policies. If we come up with a decision which essentially says, we've looked at it, and 2 + 2 = 4, based on all of this work, therefore you can't build here, how can the minister do the same calculation with less skill and say 2 + 2 actually = 3.5, and you can go ahead and build there? So, I think the logic behind the minister making these decisions completely falls apart. And for me, it really brings into question the integrity of the entire process. So that piece really troubles me.
Well, the best example of that is, I have a personal example. I went to the so-called public consultation that the minister conducted in London at the start of the year. And he stood up in this ballroom with 400 people, and he said, I want to clear up some misconceptions. I'm not here to weaken the conservation authorities. My goal is to strengthen them. And, I'm kind of looking at the result and I'm going, something happened between then and now. There's another feature of his improvements, as he's calling them, which is to change the duty of loyalty of the members of the boards of the conservation authorities. In Canadian business law, if you're a member of a board, you're by law, you owe a duty of loyalty to the organization that you are a member of the board of. And your duty is to help the organization thrive and be successful. And what the province is doing is saying that, no, for conservation authorities, board members are to make their decisions in the best interest of the municipalities and not in the best interest of the conservation authority. And as we've seen, there are some municipalities who have passed resolutions asking the province to open up the Greenbelt. And that caused such a storm that the province backed off of that. And but to give you maybe another take on the contradiction here, the province also has rules about how police boards will operate. And in the Police Act, the member of the police board has a duty. His duty of loyalty is not to the municipality, it is to the police board, to the police service that they regulate. And so you kind of have to wonder, how come the province has now got you know, one sauce for the goose and one sauce for the gander, and they're like the opposite. So, you know, one is sweet and one is acid, or whatever the right analogy is here. You know, I've been asking my contacts at Queen's Park, so are you going to change the police board fiduciary duty? That's fiduciary. I'm sorry to use Latin on you. The loyalty duty, because that's what it means. What other risks are we fearing here, Cindy?
You know, it's a very interesting discussion that's being proposed to determine, you know, mandatory and non-mandatory programs and services. You know, I'm looking at that, and I can't see in my relationship, and it's long-term, 30 years plus in my career working with conservation authorities, what would be non-mandatory? Because you know, everything the Conservation Authority is doing is supporting those, what I see to be those core mandates.
Oh, well, I can explain that. This is an attack on conservation authorities running parks and ski hills. And in fact, early in the year or so that the minister's been running at this, he was quoted in public as denouncing conservation authorities for running parks and ski hills, until we pointed out that, well, we make money with which we protect the environment. And he tended to tamp down that criticism, so much so that it was actually quite shocking to see this this come back in the final form of this thing. And it's a weird way they put it. They say, well, okay, if the municipalities all agree, and you can have you can make a contract called a memorandum of understanding, and have these non-essential, non-mandatory programs. But just to be safe, the minister has accorded to the legislation that gives the minister the power to even though you've got an agreement with every municipality, to still jump in the middle and say, well, no, I don't like this, I don't like that, or maybe you can't have it at all. So it's the essence of arbitrary power rather than the rule of law and regulation. In an ideal world, I've always believed, when you want something, you ought to be able to look up what the rules are, and if you follow them, you get it, right? And what this does is it says, well, no, if somebody that the minister knows doesn't like it, the minister can jump in and just go out of arbitrary, you know, no reasons required, just to arbitrarily say, well, no, I don't like that. You can't have that. And, you know, no soup for you, if you ever saw Seinfeld. I keep learning, but not everybody has seen it.
If these are, we know they are, these are self-funding. They are, especially at this particular time during COVID and pandemic, these are the very programs and services that are offering an opportunity to support the community's health and well-being by getting outdoors. And these, you know, these opportunities and making these activities go through the development of memorandums of understanding and agreements for programs that will cross municipal boundaries is going to be a real issue, and seems to me to be introducing more bureaucracy into a system that's already a process that's already working, you know, efficiently, and things are becoming even more convoluted instead of less convoluted and less streamlined. So I really don't understand kind of some of these introductions of some of these, you know, a differing approach, especially when there's compromised, you know, services to the and a holistic approach to providing these services, compromising green infrastructure. You know, we could go a whole different direction in terms of protecting, you know, the services that our green infrastructure provide to our community more efficiently and cost effectively than our gray and built infrastructure.
That's an excellent point. And you know, the other thing about it is it's almost as if the province is trying to snuff out a little flame of creativity and innovation. Hassaan, you invented, Conservation Halton invented a terrific scheme, a digital, innovative, smart city type of scheme to let people use our parks during COVID. We've got about 2 minutes where you could explain that. I think people might be impressed.
Certainly, Mayor Burton. So as you will know, in March, well, as everybody would know, in March, everybody had a lot of anxiety. We're trying to figure out what COVID-19 was going to do, and everything shut down. We shut down our parks as well at the time. It was a responsible thing to do because there was no way to manage crowding, as did the municipalities. Well, that very night, we decided, the senior team at CH, to say this internal turmoil that's causing, it's causing us this internal turmoil. We're the people that are there to allow people access to nature, and we feel right at the time when they need it most, we've taken it away. So how do we fix that? But let's fix it in a way that is truly sustainable. We're a growing community, we're a growing watershed. The Conservation Authority actually has a huge part to play. We're here to enable responsible development, not stop it. Just want to mention that. And so we looked at technology, and we've brought in a reservation system that also has these license plate cameras that are embedded on the driveways. As you drive up to a conservation area and you've made your reservation on your phone, takes 30 seconds before arriving, you've picked your park, you've picked your time slot, the license plate scanner will scan your plate, and by the time you get to the gatehouse, the gate will open and in you go. There is no need to wait. There is no need to have a transaction at the gatehouse. By doing that, we've been able to level out the crowding at the parks, spread visitation, ensure that when you arrive at the park today, you're not fighting for a parking spot. You don't have too many people on trails. We have sensors that are monitoring traffic on trails. The result, Mayor Burton, 650,000 visits from March to November to Halton Parks. 650,000
So,
people.
It's just astonishing, isn't it? I'm speaking to you who are watching us. Can you believe what's going on? If you, like us, find this just shocking and horrifying, please go to conservationhalton.ca/bill229 and see what you can do to lend your voice to the battle to save our conservation authorities. And I hope you'll join us next time. Thanks very much for being here.